since you're there.
No, you ain't gonna lose a thing.
Come on, you bring it.
Chris couldn't even read that.
Yeah, that's right. We'll go.
Good evening, I'm your instructor, Deborah Artis, and your assignment today is how to make an effective writing assignment. Your learning goals are, you will successfully develop critical and effective thinking skills through writing assignments. You will also develop into inherent thinkers and engaged writers. There are 5 steps in how to write an effective writing assignment. Engage your audience, which is evaluating understanding, and there are different forms of audiences depending on what you're writing. Explore, explain designing the assignment, evaluate grading criteria and the rubric, elaborate thinking beyond what you've written. There are philosophies in writing. And these are 2 of them. Christopher, would you read them, please?
Sure. Writing is an exploration. You start from nothing and learn as you go. All change, all production, and generation are affected through the word.
Okay, and those are just 2 philosophies that are used in writing. What I want you to do now is explore your philosophy. Write 3 points of what your philosophy means to you, how it affects you or pertains to life. So I will give you about 45 seconds to do that. As you do that, think about your moral values, maybe your character, also maybe your social status. What affects you? What affects, how are you affected socially through what your values or your philosophy of life is? Ashley, can we start with you, please?
My first one was, I always try to express my message and idea fully through my writing. I try to spread God's word whenever possible through my writing, and I also incorporate my Christian worldview whenever possible in my writing.
Christopher.
Well, for me, I just was thinking about writing, so I put writing as the outward expression for me of my thoughts, experiences, and dreams. That was the first one. The second one is authentic writing requires accurate and true statements. So like if you're writing a paper or if you're researching something, you want to make sure it's accurate. And then the third one is when borrowing someone's work, i.e. quotations and things of that. Always make sure you're citing the material. That's kind of the way that you make sure that you're truthful about what you're doing.
Okay. Gabriel.
Oh, mine is one on basically morals and as it pertains to myself. I have a family. I said it's a good example too. It's a family and biblical background.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, as we go through the lesson, I want you to think about what your philosophies are and how they pertain to each component of writing. As explaining learning objectives. To develop a common language for discussing and evaluating writing. 1 to 3 instances of a key term. The knowledge base. Are you using prior knowledge? Are you exploring the topic through research or background information? A common language enables students to transcend perimeters of a particular assignment or draft. Effective orientating, teaching, effective analysis of evidence, effective reflection, example, counter argument. So when you think of your very first one, how do you feel it fits into one of those 2 components?
into well, I'm just looking at it. Well, for me, I guess it would fit into my first one is writing is an outward expression, and I think common language, develop a common language. In instances of key terms would be if you're giving an expression to someone, you want to make sure that you're relating and using as much language as possible that they can actually relate to your writing. So if you were developing something, you would want to make sure that it
Okay,
can be
so
interpreted.
you would be looking at previous knowledge or maybe background information?
Right, that makes sense.
Okay, all right. And the last one, then transferring learning to other writing positions. Explaining that, learning objectives. As you transfer learning to other writing positions, you're going to look at your strengths, your weaknesses, and your revisions. Your strengths begin with, where do you start with the body of your paper? What are the ideas? As we said, does it come from your previous knowledge, background information, or research that you're doing, depending on the type of writing assignment you're doing? Your weaknesses would be to find the areas that you need to work on to strengthen. They could be grammar, they could be clarity, they could be as the paper flows, transition. So there's many different areas that the weaknesses could fall in. And the revisions are, how do you look at your previous assignment and begin to critique it and write it again in another form or taking it to a different level, which means revising it. Elaborate. Your first phase of editing. Practice writing skills. Develop deeper and broader understanding of writing concepts. Obtain more information, details, skills, and concept development. So as you write that first phase of editing, you're going to take your first draft and you're going to continually critique it and develop it. So it may go into 2 or 3 drafts before you actually come up with a final draft. Evaluate your proofreading. Understand what you know or your learning process. So as you write, there's always a learning process that you're working on. Understanding, is it a cognitive? How am I going to take this and apply it to everyday life? How am I going to apply it so that my readers understand what I'm writing and what I'm focused on? Editing, identifying strengths and weaknesses. As you continue to proofread and work, you're going to continue to edit your paper. Editing may go through 2 or 3 different stages. And then revising, refinement, undergoes acceleration, reflection of previous drafts. So remember, you're always going back to your first draft and you're critiquing it. Extend. Your extension is your cognitive thinking beyond what is written. Comparative analysis is the final draft. It is graded by a PTA scale, which is primary trait analysis, which is a scoring and a rubric, which gives you your guidelines for what is expected in the writing assignment. So what you're looking for, the clarity, the strength, the weaknesses, all those things that you have to work on to develop a good writing assignment. Your guides, teaching and learning process, criteria and standards include your thesis, your design, and the clarity. Evaluate, communicate, and motivate. Questions or answers?
I noticed that you said to, when you were talking about your initial draft, I guess that was when you're writing, you
Yes.
always use that to go back to when you're editing it, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's something I don't do. I actually
You should.
look at all, I go, when it's being edited, I go down the line and I play off of the next edit.
You should always continue to go back because it's a learning process. And the knowledge you retain from that is what makes you a better writer and helps you critique your assignment.
I have a question.
Yes.
All right, so when writing, say for instance, I'm writing something about myself, and say it's something that happened in the past. Where should I start?
That would be a narrative. You would start with some basic details that you would like to talk about, and then you would take and formulate them into maybe an outline so you can begin to draft the paper and get it developed so you have a body in your paper.
So once I do that, then I can start.
Then you go from there and you start critiquing those drafts.
How many drafts is too many drafts? Like, how many times do you think you should revise it before you just say, okay,
It depends on what the assignment is. If it's research, you could probably wind up writing 3, 4, 5 drafts sometimes. If it's an exemplification or probably a narrative, sometimes 2 or 3 drafts would be sufficient.
Last question I
And it
had.
depends,
sorry,
it depends
no.
on the length of the paper too.
Last question I have for you, just piggybacking on hers. Is it more important, do you think, to be a good writer to have proper grammatical skills, or do you think it's better to be able to convey your thoughts on paper and then worry about the grammar later?
Well, in all revision, grammar takes a part into it. But when you're first starting out your first draft, grammatical structure is not as important as getting your ideas and thoughts down clearly and making sure that the knowledge base you're using, whether it's current knowledge, past knowledge, background information, or research, that you have defined it correctly.
I got this. All right. Say there's a lot of people that doesn't write well, but they have a good story. So they hire somebody to do the writing for them. So they interview this person, right, and then they get them to write for them. Is that correct?
Yes, sometimes they do. Thank you. Hope the lesson was a learning experience.
Thank you.
See, yeah, yeah.